Strap yourself in, Woodwork prohibited and available in the studio shop.
Hey everybody, Dan Schinder here on Drum Talk TV here with a guest who actually could cross over into our Session Masters series, but this is the Performance Masters series with Brent Fitz. How are you?
I'm good.
Good, thanks for coming on, really appreciate it.
Thanks for wearing your drummer shoes. They are a standard issue when it comes to drummers.
They're very comfortable. You've done so many things, Brent, not just playing live, but you've done a lot of session work too. Let's start with that. We'll kind of skip around the timeline if that's okay.
I've done more session work more recently, but actually back in my youth, it was all about playing live for years and years and years. And then more so lately in the last 10 years, I've gotten to do a lot more session stuff. But I guess I'm trying to like juggle a bit of both, be a live player and be a session player. And two different animals, two different mentalities. I think, trying to accomplish yourself as a good live performer is a whole different, set of rules and goals and stuff. And then I didn't know that to be a good session player, it would be advantageous to be also a good live player. But so anyway, I'm just trying to be a well-rounded musician. So I think some players are great at, just being session guys, and some guys are really good live players. So if I'm able to have a little bit of both in my career, then I think I'm fulfilling those dreams.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, how does your live performing skills affect your session playing skills, and how do your session playing skills affect your live playing skills? How much do they cross over when you call on one area for the other?
When I was young, I wanted to get in front of people and play. Of course, just have an audience and get to play in front of people. But I think I overplayed, and I got that out of my system. Although I overplayed a lot in my basement, playing along to my favorite Rush records.
And when you say overplay, you don't mean too often. You mean physically doing all the big fills and the more intricate music, stuff like that? Yeah,
I just wanted to make sure I got all those extra notes in. Because, as when you're younger, you're trying to figure things out. So I just noticed as I got older that I started to play a little bit more mature and for the song. And I think that helped later on as becoming a session player, is to be real intuitive to what's important for that particular song you're working on at the time. And overplaying is probably not the best attribute as a session player, unless it's called for. But I always feel like my heroes as drummers, especially session guys, were always real intuitive to just playing for a song and
being able to take direction too, right?
Yeah, I mean, you just have to be. It's more about working with other people and not just being an individual. And I thought early on, when I was playing in front of people as a young kid, I started touring, playing in front of audiences at like 16, playing bars, underage. And those times was a little bit more about, I liked playing with people, and I liked playing in a band, but I also was, for me, I was like, man, I just want to make sure that when you're the drummer and you want to get all your little drum licks in. And now I just realized that years later, I've tapered off on all that. But I learned that from playing a lot of live gigs. That was some of the lesson learned as a session guy. So when it finally came time to, which was a privilege to get to actually play on recordings, there's a big difference from playing in front of people and having the chance to perform live, but to actually play on records and make some sort of a statement is a whole other thing that's
working under the direction of a producer and whoever's band it is and things like that come into play.
It's a whole other appreciation. So I've just spent time trying to figure out how every time I make a recording, how do I better myself on the next recording? And I started to make more proper records when I moved to Los Angeles. I'd done a lot of touring in Canada and a lot of live touring, but not a lot of as much recording. And then when I got to LA and got under the a big city like LA is pretty intimidating. There's a lot of great players, so that was where I got my feet wet. Doing a lot of recording in big studios, and I had to figure that out pretty quickly. But I had I have a little something I didn't tell you about ahead of time. I just wanted to introduce something that I actually brought from Canada that I had on my wall as a kid. And it's funny that we're talking about studio drummers, but I loved we probably had a lot of the same drum heroes growing up. I loved of course, John Bonham was a big rock drummer
I've heard of
influence.
him.
Haven't we all? And Neil Peart was, great, and I loved like bands like Kiss and Cheap Trick and a lot of those Beatle type bands. And
Ian Pace, are you an Ian Pace fan? Deep
Love
Purple?
Ian Pace. I actually liked Ian Pace more than I liked Bonham early on. I thought he had great rudiments and
that jazz influence he brought into the music.
So I actually was more a fan of him before I got into John Bonham, ironically. So, but then I was also into some other heroes that weren't quite, like all the kids in my neighborhood that were growing up listening to Kiss and Van Halen and stuff. But I had my Modern Drummer magazines early on as a kid, and I got all my drum heroes out of those magazines. So even though I had posters of, all those rock heroes back in the day, I also had a poster on my wall, which I just brought home from my parents' place in Canada. It's kind of funny, but check this out.
Oh, nice.
So is that cool?
Yeah.
So I had a poster of Jeff Porcaro on my wall.
Yeah.
And he's always sort of been my benchmark as like a studio. He's my favorite drummer.
Who also played great live.
Played great live too.
Both sides, yeah.
But
and so he's your biggest influence, your biggest hero, you think?
Yeah, I would say as an overall drummer, I think he covered, because he's a Bonham fan too, and really introduced me to like guys like Bernard Purdie, and a lot of his influences were certainly not just rock. So it gave me a chance to appreciate other styles of music too. So I kind of lived vicariously through him, and I'm still discovering him over and over and over. So
that's really cool, because one of the things, I don't do it on every episode, but if you follow this show, and if you don't, you'll learn now. And if you don't, what's wrong? But anyways, if you do,
thanks for having the forum to have Drum Talk. It's cool.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. We love it, because we do get to talk about not just the obvious stuff, but one of my favorite questions to ask is well, before I ask it, I'll kind of paint the picture. We all have drum heroes, and each of those drum heroes typically are not so much like Jeff. They're very stereotyped into the bands we know them from. Like when you think of Nico McBrain, what do you think of? You think of heavy metal, progressive metal, Iron Maiden. When you think of John Bonham or Bill Ward or whatever, So I like to ask someone like yourself, who's playing with Slash right now, that denotes a certain style of music. I love asking, who are some of your influences that are totally outside of the genre that you're known from? I love asking that question, because I think there's a big lesson in that. One of them, of course, you just pointed out, was Jeff.
Well, I grew up playing piano too.
Oh, great.
Which is really cool that my parents, forced me, not forcibly, but early on, they introduced me to piano lessons at like 5 years old. That later on was a great thing. That kind of helped me round out my musical vocabulary, and as a drummer, what has helped me now is I appreciate the musician, the drummer that's a musician.
Right.
So I love Phil Collin. I love, Dave Grohl is like the new awesome, well-rounded guy that's, such a great drummer, but just a great musician. But I always loved drummers that played other instruments. Don Henley, great singer, and so I think some of my heroes are those drummers that are like, they're musicians. They're not just the typical drummers. I mean, I love all this. We all have the same guys. Everyone's gone through a Neil Peart phase or a Buddy Rich phase, and I would say Buddy Rich is probably the best. That guy's from another planet.
Yeah.
Best drummer ever, and still to this day. But I took lessons early on when I was probably about 10, and that teacher sort of turned me on to a lot of drummers that I wouldn't have ever discovered, because...
Wait, let me ask you, what kind of music were you in when you started taking lessons, and then what did he spin you out to that opened your mind musically?
Well, maybe some of the kids at school, we were all like my friends in the neighborhood, we all wanted to be Van Halen and Kiss and Cheap Trick and those rock bands. And then the teacher, was like, well, those are cool. I love those bands too. And he was, I got to learn from a father and son team. So the son was a few years older than me, and he was definitely into rock and, cool drummers, Billy Cobham and stuff like that.
Oh, cool.
And then the dad got me into all the Gene Krupa and everything that was something I wouldn't have necessarily discovered on my own unless an adult had maybe influenced me. And I wouldn't have necessarily been turned on to certain stuff by my parents, because my parents had a lot of music. Like they had some Beatles records, but they had a lot of Liberace and stuff like that, which was, you know, but as a piano player, that was cool.
Yeah.
So I always, you know, Elton John and stuff like that. So again, I always got a little bit of the piano side and then the drum side as well. So, cool. Yeah, I got introduced to some cool stuff through like a music teacher early on. So
that's great. I kind of went through the same phase where, sort of backwards, when I was young and starting to play, I didn't know there were different styles of music, because back then, and we're about the same age, there was this AM radio station that didn't play rock music or funk or blues. It played music.
Yeah.
So at 7, 8, 9 years old, I had headphones on a stereo where the cord would reach. And on this channel, if you grew up in LA, 93 KHJ, one song would be Steppenwolf. The next song would be Neil Diamond. Then you'd hear Pat Boone, The Fifth Dimension, the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, Ohio Players. So I just played to whatever came on, not understanding the way it is now, whereas styles are so segregated onto that channel for that market, whatever they say that is. You know, it's so different. So I kind of learned early on how to stay open-minded to different styles and everything, and that's also why I like asking that question so much on the show. Who are some of your idols and influences that people might be surprised by? Because again, I think there's a big lesson in that.
And the 8-track was the most influential device for me back in the day, because, and if you were from our era, you would know what an 8-track is, and if you don't, then I'll explain it. But the fact that when you put in the 8-track into the player, those 4 programs, it wasn't advanced to fast forward like, you know, kids now can just, you know, fast forward through any sort of MP3s, and if you're bored of something, you just get rid of it. But back in those days, we would, my parents bought me this, like some sort of Rock 80 thing, and it was like a compilation of a bunch of music that was popular in 1980 or something at the time, hits. And I'd put that in. I would just play along to all those songs, you know, in my.
Because you have to listen to the whole thing.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, cool! I can't wait to play to this Rush song and this, you know, I don't know, it'd be Rick Springfield or April Wine, and then there'd be like Juice Newton. I'd be like, but okay, you know, and I would just play along to whatever was popular back then, and could have been country rock or. So I'm just glad that, you know, you don't think about those things when you're 10, 15 years old, and then here we are in our a little older
blanks.
Yeah, and all of a sudden it's like, I'm just glad that I got exposed to all those things by accident or maybe by purpose or whatever, but certainly helps to, you know, make you a better musician.
Right. Can you talk about the project you're working on now?
Sure. Well, I'm like several years into working with Slash in a not so new band anymore, but I've been working with him since about 2010, and we're 2014 now. So I had done many gigs previous to working with him that probably introduced me through some other connection to eventually. He was putting a new band together a few years back and wanted to go out on the road, and so someone had recommended me for that gig, which was
the musical 6 Degrees of Separation paid off for you.
It's I swear by it.
Yeah.
You know, things I did 20 years ago, people I met, things I had done, gigs or whatever, all have factored into what happens today and will happen tomorrow. So yeah, some sort of, you know, thing worked out that it was really cool. He gave me a call, and he was putting a new band together, and I wasn't actually doing something that was super committed that I couldn't, you know, get involved with him. So so we've actually toured a bunch. We've toured a few continents now over the years, and we were lucky enough to make a record together, and we're already on our 2nd record together. So we're just in the middle of that right now, which is cool. So I've just finished doing a whole bunch of drum tracks in LA, and I've just come home to sort of decompress here in Vegas, and I'm still working on, you know, I'll be playing some percussion and some different things on the record. Again, some cool things that I get to do now that you know, when I was younger, I never thought about, you know, playing percussion on a record either, and I you know, playing a little bit of piano here and there, some organ on different songs. So I love doing all that. The percussion side is a whole thing that, you know, you play drums forever and then you don't think about tambourine.
Yeah.
You know, maracas and percussion, they add a whole other
different
dimension.
layers. Yeah, the textures and the rhythms are different. You know,
they're all over our favorite records. If you don't even think about them, they're on Beatles records and Stones and all those great ones. And
Genesis, even progressive rock has tambourines and claves and castanets even on a triangle. Yeah.
Sure.
Ding.
Yeah, it's all cool.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. That's cool. That must be fun. What's it like? This is a dorky sort of obvious question, but I got to ask because a lot of us want to know. What's it like working with Slash?
Well, he's the most inspirational player I've ever played with.
Really?
And I think part of it is the fact that he's been so revered and successful, but yet he's the hardest on himself, and he's really inspirational to be around. So, to be around a guy who's already had lots of success, but yet challenges himself, and then it sort of rubs off on us as players. So
rather than working with someone who lets it rest on their laurels and they're just mailing it in, it's not like that at all with him, is it?
It isn't, and we're just trying to make good music and go out and play shows, and everybody in the band's sort of on the same page. It's a bit of a been there, done that mentality, and we just love playing, and that never goes away as a musician. But sometimes you get distracted by other vices and stuff, and then but this band has sort of come together at a good place in everybody's careers, and so it's just a cool band to be in. Everybody in the band's really on their own, super talented, and Slash, I think, even feels that in his as far as like bettering himself, because the other players in the band are all
cool.
established as well. So yeah, it's a pretty cool band to be in right now.
Do you know when the CD comes out and you guys will tour it?
Yeah, it's probably going to be months from now. It's like summertime.
Okay. And this is March, whenever you're watching it. This is mid-March 2014.
Yeah, it'll take a little bit to finish. We're just in a stage of getting guitars and vocals on the record, and then it'll take some time to mix a record. That'll all get done, and then the setup to going on tour is summertime. I'm dying to get on the road. So is Slash. We're all live players.
Yeah, absolutely.
As great as it is to record a record, it's even greater to go out and tour the thing.
Present it.
Yeah, it's like the best of both, because like I said years ago, when I just played other people's music in front of an audience, and then to go and have the luxury and the privilege to go and make your own music with other people and then go and perform that stuff live it's nothing better. So
that's great. We were talking earlier before we started rolling the cameras about the whole concept, and it's more than a concept, of how being in the arts and being a musician, specifically as it relates to us, keeps you young and everything. And what's interesting is that a lot of our idols are doing exactly what they were doing 30, 40 years ago, and now they're in their at least late 50s, some of them early to late 60s, and a few of them even in their 70s.
Yeah.
And they're still doing what they were doing literally way back then in the 60s and 70s. How has that affected your life? Like, did you, and you don't have to say your age, if you want to, that's fine.
I'm 43.
Okay, he's 43. So let's give that a reference. So you're 43, only a year younger than me. Just kidding. Did you ever think when you were 15, 16, 17, starting to play gigs and bars, that you'd be 43 in your mid-40s doing what you're doing still and doing it professionally and probably having a long way to go still? Did it ever occur to you that way back then?
It probably occurred to me early on that I wanted to be a musician. Well, it didn't probably. I knew in my, probably 7 or 8 years old what I wanted to do in life. And it was just having that... I guess a lot of people around me, kids growing up in my, around me in my neighborhood, I don't know if everyone knew what they wanted to do, but I just always felt I knew that I wanted to play music.
Yeah.
And my parents probably supported it, but didn't necessarily understand, well, how does that become a career? I think my dad he would have preferred me to be a dentist at first. But, since then, it's obviously things have kind of worked out that I've found a way to, the hardest thing is to figure a way to make a living playing your instrument. That's the hardest thing.
Yeah.
So, early on, it was just the love for, bands that I listened to growing up, and then wanted to emulate that, and, appreciating music more as a player, because I had teachers who taught me how to, be a better musician and have better vocabulary and whatnot. And then just as I realized playing in front of people and performing, how good that made me feel and made other people feel, and then to be creative and make your own music as well and leave sort of like a stamp, it's one thing to play live and then it's over, but to actually, create music and have it, a lasting effect by making, records and stuff.
Right.
So, and at 43, I guess it's just like careful what you wish for.
Yeah, exactly.
It all just culminated into like, well, I'm just glad I'm still doing it, because I haven't really thought about it, but at some point I've worked with Alice Cooper,
Yeah.
and some other.
The Guess Who?
The Guess Who, one of my good friends in the Guess Who, I think he just turned 70 recently, and I just look at someone who's that age and is still playing music, and I'm looking forward to wow, it must be cool to.
It's like being in a band with your dad.
Well, yeah.
Age-wise.
Who's cooler and has more rock and roll stories.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I totally get it.
It's got to be cool to have 40, 50 years of a music career behind you to look back at and reflect and still be doing that. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I've just rubbed all those great players that I've worked with have kind of rubbed off on me, and so I just hope to be a great player, down the road as well.
Yeah.
So.
I read something that I want to ask you about before we jump into one of the coolest parts of the show, and that's geeking out on gear.
Are we going to play?
And we'll play too. We got a little surprise for you at the end too, because there's a real cool percussion rig over here that I'm going to jump on while Brent.
Do we want to talk where we are real quick?
Yeah, we can do that, absolutely. Talk about that, and then I'll ask you this other question. Go for it.
Okay, real quick. So we're at a good friend of mine's place, which is Benson Productions here, and this is like the coolest.
And we're in Vegas. We're both Vegas residents. That's how we met.
Yeah. And my dear friend Benoit's place here is, it's the coolest place in town. It's like state-of-the-art.
This is
cool. Drum hang, music hang. There's a great percussion rig here. I've brought my drums off tour, set them up here off, while I'm off the road. I can still come here and jam, and it's great here. So.
And just to say, Brent sent me a link, because I said, hey, do you have any pictures of the place so I know what to bring? And he sent this link that's like what a realtor would have. It's a 360-degree thing where you just drag the thing and it looks around the whole room. I'm like, wow, this is great. It's never the same as when you walk in the door. When we walked in, it was like, remember the kids when the old Willy Wonka movie? When the kids first walk into the chocolate factory, that look on their face, that's how I felt walking in here.
Serious wow factor.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm glad we're filming here today. It's a great place.
Very cool. I read that you had, and I don't know if you were the subject of or a guest appearance or what the capacity was of you being on Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. So I want to know, did you go on to get a makeover? Did you go on to consult? What was that episode about?
Unfortunately, it was just that the artist I was working with at the time got, I guess someone who was on the show ended up going to a concert, and we were the band at the concert.
Oh, okay.
So unfortunately, I can't say that I was there was no dialogue or anything involved, but yes, they did an episode where this person came to it was Vince Neil from Motley Crue, who I was playing with, and it happened in New Jersey, and those things, sometimes those cool things, you don't know that they're happening at the time, but I think we got told during the day, hey, the film crew's coming down to film something, and blah, 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 and then I realized later what's going on is, there's some TV show stuff, but a few of those cool things have happened. Like I have also done a few of the Gene Simmons Family Jewels episodes, where I've had a chance to play with either my fellow bandmate Bruce Kulick on the show, or got to do a little bit with Gene Simmons' son Nick, and so it was just by doing some session stuff that it turned into now we're going to go and it's going to be on TV as well. So that's kind of cool.
Cool. So who wants to geek out on gear? You want to geek out on gear? Because when I posted a picture of your kit a few days ago on our Facebook page, it was the picture of you leaping over this kit, basically. And one of the first comments someone put was, whoa, I didn't know DW made clear drums.
Yeah. So
what's the story on your kit? And we'll cut in some footage while you're talking about it.
So this kit is a hybrid in the sense that the shells are from RCI, and the drums everything is put together to DW's specs.
Got it.
So yes, they don't make,
it's not
acrylic
part of their
shells.
line, right?
No, I mean they're definitely a wood drum manufacturer, and if there's something in the future changes or whatever.
Well, there's a concrete drum that John Good showed me recently.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Did you see that? It makes perfect sense, because the harder a drum surface is, the more it's going to resonate, the louder it's going to be, the more sound integrity it has. So concrete, how do you beat that,
Here's the thing about this drums, though, is I don't have the acrylic kit other than the fact that it's a live visual that I was looking for on this last tour. And it's a one-off drum kit, and I, of course, John Bonham back in the day having those Vista-like kits was really cool. And we sort of, on our last Slash record, had done everything on 2-inch analog tape. Cool. And a lot of the recording was done in a very sort of like classic retro, I guess it's retro now, approach to recording.
Did you do a lot of the tracks live and then just
all of it?
That is so cool. That's the way to record rock.
It was so fun, and I think it just translated the best. And it's really hard to do because there's a lot of pre-production involved in getting those songs worked up so that we could play them live, and not a lot of punching in and cut and pasting. So we kept a lot of the takes the way they were. But having said that, the vibe was a bit of a throwback. So I kind of felt this was my version of a throwback. Yeah. And the DW guys were really cool with facilitating that and being able to put the kit together. But it was sort of a thing where I have several awesome maple kits, and I just recorded the new record with the maple mahogany kit, which is my new favorite. Love it, DW maple mahogany, and so I would take that kit on the road next. The only thing is, again, for the live visual, this is a 28-inch kick drum.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why I have a 28-inch kick drum is Abe Laboriel Jr. I went to see Paul McCartney years ago at Staples Center in LA. And I was just blown away because the drums were so big, yet he was so musical, and Ringo had a lot smaller drums. So just in my mind, I was putting those two things together, and I was like, man, Abe's just got such a great musical feel, and the drums sounded so musical in context. So I called DW the next day, and I asked them nicely, I'm like, hey, what sizes were that kit? And they told me it's a 28, and I was like, order it, I want that. I wanted pretty much the similar vibe. So big kick drum.
Cool.
And the only thing is the maple mahoganies don't come in anything other than a 24 size. So it's my go-to recording kit now. But for a live, visual aspect, I just wanted a bigger kick drum. So all my live kits have been 28-inch kick drums, and they're really hard to play. To get used to that at first, that's a lot of drum. That's a lot of air to move.
Yeah.
But,
I have, my kick is a 24, and it's a 79 Tama Imperial Star. And in 1983, I think it was, I mixed my own color paint, and I had a guy who paints show cars paint them. Of course, me and my tech had to take everything apart, which was the biggest hassle in the world.
Yeah.
So much so that I said, when we put this BS back together, let's leave all the bottom heads off and leave the front head off of the kick drum.
Yeah, cool.
I haven't put a front head, but I don't even know where the rest of the hardware is. It's just open.
I want to do that.
Blah. I love it.
I want to
come
have
over
a whole,
and play my kit. You'll see it.
I think we should do that. I always liked when, even though there's a certain feel of the drums when they don't have the bottom heads on them, but
I love it. And I'll tell you a secret. Well, it won't be a secret anymore. My heads are Remo pinstripes. They'll probably hate me for saying this. Sorry, Remo. Got a great relationship with them, but I gotta say this. The heads on all my toms are about 9 or 10 years old. They've been through all kinds of weather changes. Used to live in Ventura by the ocean. We're out here in Vegas. They've been packed away for a while when I was in Australia. Just all these, they sound amazing. And I think part of it is the open head, the open bottoms, but they still sound like new drums. Now, I would probably put new heads on and go, oh yeah, I noticed the response. I mean, of course, but tone-wise and everything, they still sound great, and they're like 10 years old.
But who's going to argue too? I know Phil Collins doesn't change his heads. And I've actually, there was something going on in Vegas here a few years back where Genesis was doing a gig at Mandalay Bay, and through a friend of a friend, I got to go down and I got to check out Phil Collins', famous Gretsch kit, and all the heads were pitted, and I was so fascinated. I thought that was awesome because I assumed, I'm like, well, if I hit these, they're going to have that
the vibration of the pittedness.
Yeah, and I just kind of looked at it like, okay. And then Phil came up and played, and it was the best thing I've ever heard. So
that's cool.
Partly how you hit the drum and that person's, style.
Would you agree that concept, Brent, is almost like leaving the patina on cymbals? You know how the aging sometimes affects the tone and this and that, and maybe. Yeah. And Phil's heads were white, correct? Were they all coated?
The ones I saw were clear.
Oh, they were clear. Okay,
yeah.
And mine are clear, of course, as well.
Yeah.
And they just sound great, even though they're old. I don't understand it, but I've not been motivated to change them, not for the sake of being frugal or cheap, but they just sound good.
I know.
It's how you hit them. It's just getting used to them.
Sometimes I hate taking a snare head off. It just sounds sweet, and you're like, I got to change this because sometimes it might break, or if it's live and you're just like, I better change that head. But
what heads do you have on the kit?
I have, this kit's clear heads because it looks cool too. Everything's clear. A white head on the snare always.
Is it coated?
Yeah.
What brand?
Emperor X.
Okay.
All Remo. Love the Remos.
Cool.
I've always played the Remos. So the clear Emperors on this has been my go-to, but on the new record, I had the new vintage Emperors, and I think those are I'm in love with those now.
Oh,
I think
really?
they have just a certain something. I don't know if the attack is different or a little bit warmer, but the blend with those maple mahoganies was the winning factor. So so I'm loving and clear emperors, vintage emperors, and I like coated heads too. I think sometimes you just stumble onto something and then you're like, this is my new go-to, and I think it's okay to experiment. I try different snare heads, and then I have my go-tos. Like the Emperor X always seems to work. It's a solid head that I use bigger drums, and I like to hit hard, so that's going to last and still sound good after either a show or two or a couple songs in the studio. But I'm always experimenting. But so that's what I've been using lately.
And you're Sabian guy.
Sabian because, check this out, when I was a kid, I think I had like the first Sabians in my hometown.
Really?
There was a lot of there was a drum store called Drums Unlimited. This would be like 1979, 80. And I got my first drum kit, and I went down to the only local, dedicated drum store we had. And Sabian, I think they started in 80, 81, the company up in Canada.
And they're Canadian, yeah.
Yeah, and I just remember going to that store a bunch and getting my little sticks replaced or a couple different heads and those Sabians were brand new back in the day, and I literally have been playing the Sabian cymbals since the day the company started.
Oh, that's cool.
So they are, I have I love the way they sound, but I have an affinity for them just because I've only played the Sabians from day one, and
oh, wow.
I've been with the company I haven't been an endorser my whole life, Later on in my career, I got a relationship with them, but I feel like I've endorsed the cymbals my whole life, and you know what I mean by that. Just
totally.
As a
user,
as
literally.
A fan.
Yeah. Obviously, in interviewing folks for the show like you all the time, and doing a ton of being involved in the post-production process, and then revisiting the interview, weeks or whatever later, I hear this part of the segment, and my mind starts thinking, oh yeah, I want to try that, and then I'll watch another, oh no, I want to try that, I just was working on, we just finished Chad Sexton's interview,
awesome.
And he was explaining how he went to, on his toms, the smooth white heads, which are like a timbali head, and that got me thinking, because I love, he says it's a perfect attack for a band like he's in, 311, with all the different stuff going on, he can still punch through, and I love a nice, snappy, punchy attack with a lot of melodicism, a lot of tone. As I mentioned, all my drums are open, so they breathe. So now I'm kind of thinking how that might sound on my kit.
I've used those too.
Have you?
Yeah, they're super cool.
On your wood drums?
Yep, on a maple kit. I've had this. You're saying smooth white?
Yeah.
I've just had like smooth emperors on the toms, and I don't know why. Like sometimes just feel-wise, like I have to have a head on my snare that has the feel, even though I don't use brushes most of the time, but I have to have the coated head that feels when I'm, again, my comfort zones on that. So the smooth whites were a little bit different, just because I was like, well, they look kind of, different to me. And then I was tried the black smooth, I guess the suedes, and they actually sound really good. I had a suede black Emperor X on my head, on my snare on tour for a little while, and I was like, this was my new favorite head, but it was just the smoothness of it was different for me. But those are cool heads, and I think you can crank them up pretty good too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool. Very cool. So before we play, which I'm looking forward to, I'll ask you, it's time for a Brent Fitz fun fact. I know that you're being Canadian, I figured he's got to be into hockey, and come to find out you are into hockey.
Yeah, of course.
And you play often?
I play enough to get some exercise, and I usually play here in Vegas on downtime.
Right.
But I think it's probably the most dangerous thing I could do for a musician in a career, like needing your hands and stuff. So.
Right. And joints.
Yeah, I don't want to break any bones, and I don't think I can control that getting on the ice, although I do my best to play. I play with other musicians here. A lot of the Celine Dion cast and crew are regulars on the ice out here. So, I mean, and we're Canadian, and it's, yes, Canadians love hockey. But so I do it for the exercise. I don't like to work out. I don't like to go to the gym. I kind of feel like I have to be doing something that feels like I don't know, when it's more sporty.
You're looking for more of an experience to get it done rather than a task, it seems like, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's good that I, at least on downtime, can go out and play with other musicians and I'm, of course I'm excited because Team Canada just won the Olympic hockey thing, so.
Right, and when I asked you about this the night we met, I was saying, where is there to skate out here? Because I don't play hockey. I've never played hockey, but I've always loved to ice skate. I love a good leg workout. I run, I walk a lot, I hike and all that. And so you told me about this place that was on the south side of town. And my wife and I were somewhere recently, and I think I was driving, and I was like, oh, that's the place Brent was telling me about. Let's go skating sometime. I was like, she's like, just stay focused on the road and let's go home. Like I just wanted to go and go skating.
Yeah,
so I can't remember the name of it, but I saw it. It was near Durango. And
it's I think Las Vegas Ice Center is what they call it.
That's
but there's another rink in one of the casinos at Fiesta Casino. So,
okay.
Of course,
that's
in Vegas, there's a rink
north of me,
in a casino.
Yeah. Where else would you put it?
But what's funny is, as a kid growing up in a very cold city, Winnipeg, Canada, we had little hockey rinks in every neighborhood. They were outdoor rinks, and that was our that was the social place where everybody went to as kids. So, moving to LA first. I know you grew up in LA, and I moved to LA. For 10 years, 10 years ago. Prior to that, when I got there, I was like, where's the hockey? It's like, good luck. But I found hockey in LA too. And here we are in Vegas, and it's like, to most people, it's like, you guys play hockey in Vegas? The desert? Come on.
Right.
But yeah, it exists here, and it's getting more popular, so it's cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So being that we're in a toy store, we're going to play with a few toys. And what's cool about this is any chance you get, play with other drummers, whether it's percussion and percussion, or drum kit and drum kit, or like what we're going to do, drum kit and percussion, because it makes you kind of think differently. I think when you play a drum duet or even in a drum circle or something, it just makes the brain think differently rather than when you're the only timekeeper in the band or something and you just kind of solo back and forth or something. I just think it makes you look at music structure and rhythm structure and drumming a little differently. And if you pay attention, there's always something you can take from an experience like that and then apply it to being beyond the kit or whatever it is you do with the musical outfit that you play in, I think.
And we've never played together, so.
And we've never played together, yeah. So this will be kind of fun. He didn't even know I played drums.
That's not true.
Cool, so we're just going to.
You were wearing the shoes for the start.
That was
right.
That was my giveaway. Well, and the show is called Drum Talk TV.
Right.
So we're just going to set up the cameras a little bit different. We'll be right back, right about